No, this is not a concept car that escaped from a showroom floor. This is the production version of the Mazda MX-30, a car that seems to have more quirks than features.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's start with the doors. Mazda calls them freestyle doors, and if someone parks close to you, you're going to have to perform some freestyle dancing to get in the back. But this door design is nothing new in the automotive world, with Mazda RX-8, Toyota FJ Cruiser and BMW i3, to name just a few examples. Of course, the RX-8 and the FJ Cruiser were niche models, and the i3 is BMW's way of telling the world, hey, we've got an EV. Mazda adopted a similar approach. Hey, let's make a car look different, because then clients looking to show off their eco-friendliness will choose the MX-30 over the Kia Niro, which looks the same regardless of the powertrain. If Mazda was an automotive giant who can afford such a decision, I wouldn't pay such attention. But Mazda is a small car maker that keeps reminding us of how they need to use their resources wisely, and this is why they spend so much time optimizing internal combustion engines.
Have you seen my Mazda CX-30 review? I wondered whether Mazda ever planned to make that model, because the model naming scheme suggested no place between the CX-3 and CX-5, as the CX-4 is a different model made for the Chinese market. And it seems like they really weren't planning the CX-30, because they were working on the MX-30. Let me spell it out for you. Instead of designing a direct competitor for the Nissan Qashqai, Mazda decided to merge the FJ Cruiser and the RX-8.
And give it a short-range electric powertrain, because Mazda calculated with a shorter range the car will be more eco-friendly, and their research shows an average European driver covers 48 kilometers a day, so 200 is enough for most of the week.
I'll start with the range business. Currently, I have EV review streak, so I'm going from one EV to another, and I see different approaches to design and range. I came to the conclusion that short range is not a problem if the price is right. It's a matter of getting out of your head that you need a car for road trips. No, you need a city car. A viewer recently told me he bought a dealer demo Skoda e-Citigo. He lives in a block of flats but has a charging station close by, so that's fine. He drives the car only in the city, and what's most important, in Poland EVs are exempt from parking fees, so he can park in the city center for free. Ka-ching!
I bet you can find a similar justification wherever you live for slightly more expensive cars like the Peugeot E2008, the Opel Corsa E, the Renault Zoe or the Nissan Leaf. It is possible to buy a cheap EV for the city, and it can be practical for an average family. And if you want something more upscale, there's always the Mini E or the BMW i3.
And how does the Mazda MX-30 compare? With prices starting at €32,500 without taking into account any local incentives for EVs, the MX-30 competes directly against the electric Mini, but it's cheaper than the Peugeot E2008, which has longer range also.
For $32,500, we get a city crossover with liquid-cooled batteries. That's important because it helps power management and prevents heat damage. You can charge the batteries from a CCS outlet at 50 kilowatts. The Type 2 charging is up to 6.6 kilowatts, and it will take 5 hours to top up the battery, and from a regular 230-volt socket, it's going to take about 18 hours. But Mazda says that 200 kilometers range is actually a combined figure when the MX-30 uses 19 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers. In the urban cycle, it's up to 262 kilometers, and the energy consumption drops to 14.5 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers.
In real life, it's not quite as rosy. On the first day, I did manage to get the energy consumption down to about 16 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers, so I was optimistic, but then it jumped to 19, and it remained there for the rest of my week with the CX-30, MX-30. Oh gosh, they can't, I mean, MX, CX, who does these names? For reference, the electric Mini used about 15 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers, but that was during the summer. I reviewed the VW ID.3 and the Peugeot E2008 a week earlier in slightly colder weather, and they both achieved about 16 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers.
Of course, if I preconditioned the car, I'd probably get a better result. Mazda even has an app, so I could program minimum charging just for preconditioning, but that's assuming I have my own private charging socket.
With the battery fully charged, the car displayed about 175 kilometers range. For the first 20 kilometers or so, the recuperation is limited. It's controlled with the paddle shifters, but you have to remember to turn it on every time you shift out of D, like when making a 3-point turn.
Like in the ID.3 and the E2008, the recuperation is weak. In my opinion, Nissan and BMW do it better, as I can drive the Leaf or the i3 just lifting off the accelerator and using the brake only in emergency situations. One could say Mazda's approach is better for the enthusiast driver who likes to have more control over the car. For example, in the Porsche Taycan, recuperation is also limited for better feel during spirited driving. However, the Mazda MX-30 is no Porsche Taycan, even if it has G-vectoring.
Front-wheel drive, 145 horsepower, 270 Nm of torque, and a 0 to 100 km per hour time of 9.7 seconds. I checked, and it's about right. I even managed a 9.5 once. From 80 to 120 km per hour, the MX-30 takes about 7.5 seconds. In both cases, it is fractions of a second quicker than the Peugeot E2008. With a realistic range of about 180 kilometers, it's unlikely you're going to be road tripping in your MX-30, and if you leave the city, it's for a calm and efficient drive somewhere close or somewhere where you can recharge pretty quickly. So you won't be using G-vectoring much.
Visibility in city driving is terrible because you're basically sitting with your head behind the B-pillar. But there is no B-pillar. Well, not as such, but there's the back freestyle door. Stopping at a give way sign, I have to lean forwards more than in other cars to see anything to the left. Also, the driver aids are very aggressive. At low speed, the MX-30 just stopped dead in its tracks, despite the fact I started braking myself. Fortunately, the driver behind me kept their distance, but in my rearview mirror, I saw they were not amused.
Soundproofing is decent, but since Mazda wants to give its drivers Jinbai Tai, there's a fake engine noise. And it's played through the speakers, of course. Yeah, Porsche does the same, but in the Taycan you can turn the fake sound off. And in the MX-30, I don't think there is a setting for it. At least I couldn't find it. Prove me wrong in the comments below.
To shift from park to reverse or drive, you need to move the lever right, and then to put it back in park, you need to shift up to R and then shift it to the left. Why bother with drive-by-wire when you can't just turn the car off and get out?
I realize I haven't said anything particularly good about the MX-30, but I'm really ticked off that instead of designing an EV variant of the CX-30, because it's the same platform, Mazda wasted money on this.
And it gets even more interesting. There is so much space under the bonnet they could have easily made a frunk, at least to store the charging cables. However, this empty space is for, wait for it, the range extender, which of course will be a Wankel engine to please the Mazda fanboys.
But that's not all, because Mazda has just launched a petrol Skyactiv G MX-30 in Japan with all-wheel drive. Why oh why, since they have the CX-30, which could accommodate all the electric bits and bobs. Because guess what? The cars share the same platform and have the same dimensions.
Perhaps Mazda could share more elements inside and achieve its eco goals. They would not have to use scrap cork and recycled plastic bottles. I know the i3 has upholstery from recycled materials as well, to offset the additional touchscreen, which does nothing more than a couple of buttons and knobs in the CX-30, the 3, the 6, the CX-5. Even in the i8, BMW saved money and left the same AC and radio controls like it put in all of its cars of that era. At least the virtual instrument cluster is the same, the only difference is the power gauge instead of a rev counter. By the way, there is an arrow showing where the charging port is, so that's a plus.
The seats are comfortable, at least. Much more comfortable than what I remember from the Mazda 3. The driving position is spot on, and if this was a petrol car, I'd be looking forward to doing long road trips behind the wheel of the MX-30. Maybe in Japan.
Storage is okay, the armrest slides so even shorter drivers can use it, the door pockets are decent, and the cup holders are very good as well. The glove box is okay.
And what about the USB ports and the 220-volt socket that Mazda boasts about in its press release? They are under the floating console. Owners of older Volvos say the floating console is a great place to store CDs. Well, the MX-30 doesn't have a CD player, so if you lose anything, start searching from under the floating console.
Doors open wide, probably so that you can hide behind them and then open the rear doors. You don't even need to move the front seat to get in the back, but it is tight there. There is not much space in the front, so you slide the seat back and then it's really bad. Place for kids? Okay, but when you have kids you probably want easier access, so the back seats here are for occasional use. The access is better and there is more space than in the Mini Cooper SE, but for occasional use nonetheless. The door pockets are for small bottles only. Good thing there's an armrest with cup holders. It is pretty dark back here. These small windows look like on a plane and they are not very good for looking out of. You can sort of remind yourself what it was like before the pandemic. The boot has 366 liters volume, 341 with the Bose audio system. I'd rather have some space for my charging cables, like in the ID3 or the E2008. No shopping bag hooks, no place to store the parcel shelf. With the seats in the second row folded, you get about 1,150 liters. Prices of the Mazda MX-30 start at €32,645. The test car costs about €40,000, two of which is for the red paint alone. The individual Storm Grey paint, which is the most expensive paint color on the BMW X2, costs just €1,170.
I like the Mazda MX-30 bold looks and I don't have a problem with its range. It definitely looks better than the Nissan Leaf and it has a better interior, so for 32k and some change it's kinda sorta acceptable. However, anything more is asking tad too much for what the MX-30 really is. And how do you like the Mazda MX-30? Shut up, bird? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.